Right, good day folks, this is me from Rex to Rides. I'm going to put on my YouTube voice and introduce you to our latest, the 1984 Isuzu KB2000. Now I can give you a lot of specs about this car. It's basically a entry-level 2-litre petrol 1-tonner, which we picked up for next to nothing, but is in really actually quite good condition. Despite from some of the things you see. The first thing I noticed about this was it's not very big, but it is a 1-tonner, so I think it's quite useful as a rebuild into something that would be quite valuable. I doubt that, you know, when you want to look at things like value in a vehicle, there's a lot of factors that you have to take into consideration. The first is obviously the value of the vehicle from the dealer, which is they're going to give you a trade, which is going to be nothing. The market value, which is how much people are prepared to pay for something like this. And I think the most important thing is the value to yourself and how the car speaks to you. And this car, when I first saw it, I thought, well, you know, this car spoke to me. It's styling, it's very simple, it's basic, as I said, 2-litre, it's from the 1984, it's still carbureted. It's very simple, and it's going to be a very busy but a very fun little project. Now the first thing I noticed on the bodywork is that the bodywork is really quite good. The chassis has very little rust on. The leaf springs look okay. Let's have a look in here. But it's a 1-tonner, so I would have them reconditioned, and well, a bit of paint is required. And what I did notice, obviously, first off, was that it had a previous accident here, which they'd fixed very well. You can see, if you look closely, there's a seam there, and this panel itself has been replaced, and age has got into it. Now what you can also notice is that the steel that they've used to replace this is genuinely quite thick. So we've got one spot on this car where the rust has gone through, and that is really going to be very simple to cut out and weld a new section in, so that's not a problem for me at all. In fact, that's going to be quite a nice little challenge. And as I mentioned, the steel looks a little bit over 1 millimeter thick, so rust isn't a problem, and you could probably weld a panel in there with an arc welder. You wouldn't even need a MIG or a TIG, but we're going to try that on the TIG, which is going to be interesting. Here, what I'm planning to do on the rear step is to whip this out, put a bar in and a tow bar, because, as I said, value to myself. What I'd like is to redo this completely and keep it as a spare work bucky. As it is a runner. We'll get to the motor in a minute, but it's not very presentable, so that's going to be. Now the biggest seller to me was the interior. The interior of this car is really minto. If you look at it, they tried to steal it once, so the bottom cowling is gone, and obviously they tried to get in there and they were caught in time. But I mean, just look at this dashboard. Not a crack at all. I really like this 80s styling with your charge and your oil pressure and your clock. It's very simple, it's very basic, and I think for the time really quite elegant and really quite neat. It's going to be fun finding a new this is a cover for the interior light, and well, it's not really going to do much now, is it? It's not going to let any light through at all, but I'm sure we can pick up something somewhere. These sun visors, the visors stay up. I mean, that's a bit of a miracle, that in its own. And so yes, there's very little that needs doing to the interior here. It's just, you know, hardly even needs a bit of a clean. So that's a complete win. Everything works if I'm using it correctly. Well, do we ever use the indicators? Probably not. And let's have a look, see what's going on underneath here. The doors open and close. That's a win. Now, as I said, this is your basic carbureted 2-litre motor, and I've taken the battery out because I was covered in acid. You can see that this car's been standing for a while. There's some form of inline fuse going on here, and the condition is generally really quite good. It has one of those open bays, which it isn't covered in plastic and shit. They've taken out the heater valve connection, so it's not going to be fun in winter. But here's your summer and winter selector, which I've never seen before, but it's a form of a choke really. When you put it on winter, it sort of restricts the airflow. Sounds quite fun. What I love about it is they have used coolant, so the car hasn't sat for years with just water in quietly rusting away inside. The motor does turn, and we have hand cranked it, so that's all going very well. Now, the motors had been done recently before the car was sort of left, and the head's been done, everything's been done. What we are sitting with on the motor wise is the oil pump, which is not really a lot to change, and we need to source ourselves a fuel pump, which is why they've tried to put a solenoid in here, an electric fuel pump, and that isn't really working well. It's siphoning back, and it's not ideal, but very basic electrical. So you know, there's nothing complicated going on here. A bit more of the TIG welder going to come out there, and yeah, so yeah, what we can do is do something a bit more imaginative with the fuse box and make that nice and really clean it up and make it extremely presentable. So like I say, I haven't done anything on the project yet, and all I've done is take the battery out, but I've had a really good look at it, and it's generally, it's all there. So I'm really looking forward to this Wreck to Ride project. I've got a bit of a choice between an Isuzu red of the era and the blue official Isuzu colors of that time. Wasn't really, it doesn't do it for me. So now, with our fueling situation, I think, let's see, before we carry on here with the motor, we're going to leave the motor as is. We're just going to give it a really good clean, because my advice to you is you never take a car that looks like this to a mechanic, because he's going to treat it like this. So we're actually going to start on the bodywork. As I said, the interior needs very little. The bodywork, the electrical, and then we'll get it mechanically sound, well, mechanically perfect. And then we have a usable bucky. Now my plan here, obviously with our fuel, is we're going to start off by removing the load bin. And by taking off the load bin, that's going to allow us to take a look at the chassis, get it on its side, sort out the rust, replace the rust, and then actually put some rust proofing on the chassis, get the tank out, get the tank in for reconditioning, new fuel lines, make sure the differential oil is good, it is a rear wheel drive, make sure the springs are good, rubbers replaced, and get everything ready up to the cab, and then load bin back on, and then we can continue with the aesthetics of the cab and the bonnet. Here is another little fun. I see some spot welds have come loose here, and that's really quite minor. So it is our load sensor valve can go, and that can get bypassed, because it isn't really going to load a hell of a lot of stuff. The one thing about these motors is it's a 2-litre motor, and this motor in those days was built quite square, which means the bore and the stroke are very, very similar, which doesn't give you a very powerful or economical motor, but we want to keep it original. We don't want to do any engine swaps or anything on that. And yeah, so that's our plan for this, and I think it's time to get cracking. So as they say, like and subscribe, and I'll admit I've never liked and subscribed on fucking anything. I wouldn't even know where to begin liking and subscribing, but I would appreciate it if you do, and share, and let's see how we can get on with this journey.